What is the single most important goal of any video game, no matter the genre? To minimize frustration, if not outright remove any aspects of it entirely. If you can successfully keep frustration to a negligible level, then you have a well-designed game. The single most common cause of frustration in video games is a loss of agency, one's ability to take action towards a desired outcome. Agency, or lack thereof, is a huge reason why so many people get frustrated when playing League of Legends due to the sheer number of negative things that can happen to the player without having any say in the matter. But if there's one aspect of the game where Riot makes an effort to give the player complete agency, it would be their champion. Asking anyone why they play the champions they like, their response usually goes along the lines of they feel good to play. For example, the reason every champion nowadays has some semblance of mobility is because mobility in a positioning-focused game leads to more agency. In spite of this doctrine, however, back in 2023, a most unusual champion was released, a diver intended for the jungle who goes by the name of Briar. Briar is one of League's most confounding champions to date as a result of her being the only cast member who goes against the central notion of agency, by consequence making her one of the game's most problematic champions, only kept in check by the fact that her unorthodox playstyle makes her somewhat unpopular. Briar very much embodies the noob stomper archetype, a set of champions known for their dominance in low elo yet struggle to find success in high elo, making it exceedingly difficult to find a proper middle ground for them. In today's Everything Wrong With, I want to talk about the restrained hunger, breaking down exactly what her deal is. The interesting thing about Briar is that contrary to her unimposing stature, she has the unique distinction of being part of many archetypes in League. She may even be the only one who is a part of all of them. For starters, Briar is a pursuit champion. Pursuers are champions who excel in chasing down enemy champions continuously without any loss to their overall pressure, usually through superior tempo. Some examples would be Olaf, Nocturne, and Warwick. What they lack in burst damage, they make up for with incredible staying power, relentlessly pursuing their target until either person dies. Secondly, Briar's a raid boss. Normally when you think of raid bosses, you think of giant hulking Vulcans like Darius, Aatrox, Renekton, Sion, champions who can dish out a ton of punishment and take it as well, forcing the enemy team to allocate more resources and manpower than they're comfortable with in order to neutralize them. On one hand, you want to ignore them since you'd be spending too much to deal with them, but on the other, you can't ignore them since they can eventually run through your entire team by themselves. Thirdly, Briar's a duelist. Duelist champions excel at 1v1s owing to a combination of high consistent DPS, some form of sustain, or a means of augmenting their survivability, and typically mobility tools to keep on their target if in the event they try to run away. Fourthly, Briar's a diver. Divers are the ones who start fights. They're able to engage on the enemy team from a considerable distance and create a big enough splash to open up the door for their teammates to follow up. A good diver often wins their team the fight with the first engage alone, especially if they can single out a priority target or lock down multiple members of the enemy team. Lastly, Briar's a stat checker. Stat checkers, as the name implies, beat you by simply carrying a bigger stat line than you. Their pressure tends to be unavoidable or guaranteed, making it so the only way you can take them on is by having more attack and defense so that you can survive their attacks and kill them first. It's these 5 attributes that make up the champion standing in front of you, all of which lend credence to how strong she can be. Briar might be the only champion in the game with all 5 aspects. Such a combination of virtues would have you believe she's a fantastic champion to pick up for carrying games, and depending on how you look at it, that might be true. If not for a special condition, Briar would easily outclass the majority of the roster's best 1v9ers, from Riven to Yone to Irelia to Fiora to Master Yi to Jax. Okay, maybe not Yone, but you get the idea. She can out-pursue most of them courtesy of her full combo lasting indefinitely until she leaves combat. She's the only skirmisher in the game with a global teleport able to join fights even from basically any spot on the map assuming she lands her ultimate. Briar's also one of the few melee carries who you can't really outplay in a conventional sense. While skirmishers have excellent staying power, it's counterbalanced by the ability to outplay them by dodging key attacks. For example, baiting out Fiora's riposte or sidestepping Yasuo's knockup. As a stat checker, it's extremely difficult to avoid her main pressure given how it's applied. Altogether, you have a pick who's noticeably more capable than most other champions. Such privileges are not given freely, however, as they come with but a single caveat: loss of agency. I'm guessing everyone here has played Pokemon sometime in their life, right? You know how in Pokemon attacks usually don't go higher than 100 power without some sort of condition or drawback to them? For example, moves like Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, Earthquake, Flamethrower, Psychic, and whatnot have good base power and 100% accuracy, very strong moves with no strings attached. On the other hand, there are 4 moves in Pokemon known for their extreme damage output far exceeding most other attacks in the game at a base power of 120 while still having 100% accuracy: Outrage, Petal Dance, Thrash, and Raging Fury. What's the catch then? The catch is that you're locked into using the attack every turn, upon which after 2 or 3 turns pass, the user becomes confused. You're essentially taking a gamble. You can dish out substantial amounts of damage with a move like Outrage, but you leave yourself wide open to enemy response on the off chance they can withstand your assault. Not to mention they can play around the fact that you have no control over your Pokemon and set up to punish you for doing so. Briar is outrage personified. Her entire playstyle consists of an all-or-nothing gamble. You either go 0 or 100, no in between. If things work out, Briar can achieve a pressure ceiling far greater than most champions, but it comes with an equal probability of not just being useless, but actively sabotaging your own team, since dying in League also makes the enemy team stronger. Therein lies the central problem with Briar. Considering League is a team game, actions and the consequences that follow affect not just you, but those around you. If you score a big lead in the early game, your team can traverse the map more confidently. Conversely, if you've had kills in the early game, your team might not be as comfortable making plays in light of your enemy laner being a bigger threat. While this applies to all champions, it's taken to an even greater extent with Briar because she's the only champion in the game who willingly surrenders control to fight. Taking a look at Blood Frenzy, it is objectively one of the best steroids in the entire game. 95% bonus attack speed, 60% bonus movement speed, and your attacks deal AoE damage for 5 seconds. In addition to that, on a one-time activation per cast of her W, you can empower your next basic attack to deal a massive chunk of percent missing health damage and heal for a portion of the damage dealt. Other attack speed steroids don't even offer half as much as Blood Frenzy. However, while you're in this state, you're unable to control Briar through inputs. She automatically makes a beeline for the nearest enemy target and attacks away at them until they die, or she does. Now, you are provided a measure of agency in that her Q Hand Rush doubles as a lock-on tool, letting you choose who you want to tear apart. But outside of that, you're at the mercy of circumstance, as in you might as well take your hands off the keyboard and preach. That is the essence of Briar's playstyle. Press W, then Q, and then just hope you have enough DPS to kill the target. To her credit, she typically does. She's deliberately designed to have a higher base pressure than most champions to offset the loss of control when using her, but that concession does nothing to absolve her from the problematic nature of this kind of gameplay. If League was a 1v1 game, then Briar's design is completely permissible if not a fun addition to the game. But because League is played in 5v5, Briar runs a risk of screwing her team over bad decision making. Blood Frenzy has you relinquishing any benefits that come from positioning in that you won't be able to really dodge enemy attacks, forcing you to basically face tank whoever you're fighting. That's why she's a stat checker. The heightened movement speed coupled with the point and click dash on a Q and being an auto attacker means most of Briar's pressure is unavoidable. However, the enemy's pressure also becomes unavoidable. You're straight up just YOLOing and hoping you have more stats than they do. In fairness, all stat checkers are like that, but even the most point-and-click champions have the option to disengage or at the very least, stop attacking if the player doesn't feel confident. Briar on the other hand can't just stop whenever she wants to. The only way she can do so is through Chilling Scream. But the thing about Chilling Scream is that it has a longer cooldown than Blood Frenzy, meaning there can and will be moments where you need to cast W since that's all of Briar's pressure, but you'll have no way to prematurely cancel her Berserk state. Again, were this a 1v1 game, that would be fine, but League is a team game. The nature of Briar's kid means she does not have a neutral game. If she wants to attack, she has to fully commit and go all the way, otherwise you're basically just a cannon minion at that point. Neutral is a huge part of League's mid to late game. Sometimes teams engage in quick exchanges before backing away and resetting back to neutral. Briar doesn't give you that option, not without wasting Chilling Scream. By extension, she pressures her team to play for all or nothing too, which leads to several instances where the Briar player engages but the team is not willing or able to follow up on it, resulting in Briar dying pointlessly. There's a reason she averages some of the highest deaths in the game out of any champion. You literally cannot play her any other way. Every time you engage, you're basically gambling. Even if you're fed, if the enemy team plays around you properly or your team hangs you out to dry because they think you're being an idiot, you can easily get shut down and throw your lead. Regardless of how fed she is, she needs her team to back her up or at least bail her out after she engages. Otherwise, the three possible outcomes, win, lose, and retreat, will result in a net negative because you can't disengage. Winning is a positive and losing is a negative. Retreating is supposed to be a neutral outcome. Sometimes it can be a positive thing if you scored a kill then ran away, or it can be a negative thing if you suffered a casualty and had to cut your losses. But since Briar depends on a team to supply cover fire or heal tools to get her out to safety, if the team isn't with her at all times, Briar inherently has one positive outcome, but two negative outcomes. The higher stat line she gets in terms of DPS, healing, and whatnot are attempts to make that one positive outcome, winning, happen more often than the two negative outcomes combined. But understandably, there's a limit to how much Riot can give Briar for free. They can't make her that much stronger than it appears, otherwise it will just be unfair. At the same time, since Briar doesn't have the option to retreat, while everyone else has the outcomes win, lose, and retreat, Briar has the outcomes win, lose, and lose. The only ways to remedy this are to make it so you only take fights that have the highest chance of winning, or to have your teammates turn that second lose into a retreat for you. The latter option puts more burden on your teammates than the payoff is worth. Briar's design is toxic because it forces her team to essentially play around her whether they like it or not, essentially stealing agency from her team to compensate for intrinsically having very little of it. You may have heard this before, better for all 5 teammates to take a bad fight than for only one teammate to take a good one. This is true, it doesn't matter how good a fight is if you're walking into a 3v5, whereas if all 5 of you push into a seemingly bad fight, you might be able to brute force your way through it. Be that as it may, a bad fight is still a bad fight no matter if you salvage it or not. Save for the top level Briar players, the remaining player base has a tendency to take more bad fights than good ones, which in turn make the rest of the team suffer the consequences too. It can be frustrating for the person playing Briar when the situation turns against them due to lacking traditional means of adaptation, and it can be frustrating for the rest of the team who has to deal with the Briar player smashing their head against the proverbial wall in the hopes of a different outcome. But in reality, that's all Briar can do. She plays in one singular way and can only play in that one singular way. All 5 properties to her, being a pursuer, stat checker, raid boss, duelist, and diver, blow up in smoke when you recall she doesn't have an off switch without her E. This all-or-nothing playstyle makes it far too easy to play around Briar as the enemy team, and far too difficult to play with her as the ally team, especially given she's the jungler, often the most integral member of the team. Understanding this, like I mentioned earlier, the balanced team tries to give Briar a bit more leeway than other members of her class. Each aspect of her kit is made purposefully overtuned so that she can potentially brute force her way out of a bad situation. Crimson Curse deals the same damage over time as Hemorrhage, but it's on a character who can get full stacks much faster. Head Rush is a really busted dash ability when you look at it. Stun, Ward Hop ability, Hybrid Shred, low cooldown, auto attack reset, and on hit effects. I already went over how Blood Frenzy might possibly be the single best non-ultimate attack speed steroid in the game. Look at the maximum damage Chilling Scream can do if you slam enemies into a wall. Like, look at that shit. What the f? And finally, Certain Death. Fighting an ultimate gassed up Briar 1v1 is extremely difficult unless you're way more fed than her or hard counter her like if you're playing Jax. That happens to bring us to another issue. Briar's numbers have to be kept on the higher end in order to add a modicum of consistency to her, but a byproduct is that when Briar does get fed, she can stat check you into oblivion. Stat checkers ordinarily have a restricted threat radius. Champions like Nasus, Garen, and Mundo can overwhelm you through durability and damage, but they're easy to kite and play keep away against. No such option against Briar. She has 3 gap closers, one of which can snipe you from across the neighboring galaxy, and on top of that, Briar can give herself a 90% movement speed buff that persists indefinitely until you die or she does. She gets 20% lifesteal on top of the lifesteal from her passive on top of the healing from her W. She can gain armor and magic resist and shreds your armor and magic resist, and usually builds Black Cleaver to stack even more on top of that. A fed Briar is for all intents and purposes a bruiser master E. The only way to beat her is to burst her down, but she has the luxury of building tank items in addition to Chilling Scream having damage mitigation. She is the advantage state champion. Of course, all of that is kept in check by the fact that she is debatably the worst disadvantage state out of any champion. Essentially, when Briar is winning, if the enemy team doesn't have the right comp to shut her down, it's practically an auto-lose, but when she's losing, her team has to still play around her as if she's winning because Briar can't play for the team. She just does her own thing and her team has to follow her for better or worse. Neither side wants to see her for being inherently more risk than reward. Like I said in my badly designed abilities, I thoroughly enjoy the premise of Blood Frenzy as a concept and the feeling of going totally berserk. But such premise comes with an extremely degenerate playstyle where you either raffle stomp the entire game without any method of recourse by the enemy team, or you intend feed all game because your champion literally forces you to. I think the easiest way to describe Briar would be that she's the biggest matchup check in League. Matchup checks beat you by basically cheesing you, which is not good game design in my opinion. I mean, sure, every champion has their own quirks you gotta watch out for, but the fact that her win rate falls off a cliff the higher up you go just goes to show you that once people figure out how to exploit her, if not for her overinflated stats, she would without question be a troll pick. Anyway, what do you guys think about her? Do you think I'm being too pessimistic or do you agree with my points? You're welcome to share in the comments. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you'd like to like and subscribe. Consider following me on Twitter at Vars, joining my Discord server, and checking out my other Everything Wrong With episodes if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.